2 men, 13 multi-million-dollar businesses, 8 kids. Get ready to enter the Thrivetime Show.
We started from the bottom, now we here. We started from the bottom, and we'll show you how to get here. Started from the bottom, now we here. We started from the bottom, now we here. We started from the bottom, now we here. We started from the bottom, and we'll show you how to get here. Started from the bottom.
All right, Thrive Nation, welcome back to the Thrivetime Show on your radio and podcast download. Now, those of you who listen to our show often know that I've been involved in a lot of different real estate and ventures over the years. I've flipped a few houses. That's not my core competency, but the book that I used, kind of like my handbook, kind of like my real estate Bible when I was flipping those homes, was a book called Find It, Fix It, Flip It. Make millions in real estate, one house at a time. And on today's show, we're interviewing the author of the book, Michael Corbett. He's the best-selling author of, once again, Find It, Fix It, Flip It, Make Millions in Real Estate, One House at a Time. And today's guest, Mr. Michael, he began his career in the world of Broadway. And through this man's epic career, he had a 5-year role on The Young and the Restless from 1986 to 1991. I saw this man in Star Trek The Next Generation. He's been on the Tyra Banks Show, The View, Larry King. He's kind of a big deal. And through a series of poor life choices, he's now on the Thrivetime Show. Michael Corbett, how are you, sir?
Well, that is the best introduction I've ever had.
All right.
I'm great. How are you today?
Well, I appreciate you for being on the show. And first off, thank you for writing the book. You're a guy with this award-winning career as an actor. So what made you decide to actually want to transition from focusing your attention as award-winning, you're an award-winning actor. People are seeking you. You have your film credits are massive. What made you decide to go from being an actor to pursuing a career in real estate?
I don't think it was sort of a choice of one or the other. I've always, from my very first days, I was basically on a soap opera 17 years.
Right.
So when I first started back in New York and Broadway and all that sort of thing, my dad was an accountant, and I always was interested in finance and investments. So after my first sort of $10,000, basically overpayment or kind of bonus from when I was on Ryan's Hope back on ABC back in New York, I said, well, geez, what do I do with that? So I thought, you know what? I'm going to buy the house next door to my grandmom, and I'm going to make it look nicer, because we didn't really have terms for flipping, and it wasn't as defined as it is today. So I'm just going to buy the house next door to my grandmom's and maybe convert it from a 2-bedroom to a 3-bedroom and kind of spruce it up a little bit and see what I could do. So I did that. While I was still working in New York, I would commute back down to Collingswood, New Jersey. And I did that, and I ended up making more money doing that than I had done in the whole quarter being on television. So I thought, wait a minute, maybe I'm onto something. So the entire time, I've been doing everything from Broadway to film to television to now I'm actually producing television shows. I have always been doing real estate on the side.
This is one thing that's kind of funny. This is how you and I got to meet each other here today. Is I pride myself on reading a lot of books. I hold myself accountable to a book quota. And so I'm always wanting to read a certain number of books, okay? So my ideal was a young man. I grew up impossibly poor, and I thought to myself, I've got to read at least one book a week written by somebody who's more successful than I am. So I go into Barnes & Noble, and I'm looking for the book of the week, the book of the week. I go in there, I'm perusing around, wandering around with no discernible particular thing I'm looking for. And I find your book, Find It, Fix It, Flip It, Make Millions in Real Estate, One House at a Time in today's market. And I opened up the book, and there was so much detail in it. I mean, your book is a true idiot's guide. That's why I bought it, because I'm an idiot. I mean, I bought the book, and I wanted to know, how do you do? Can you talk to me? What was your inspiration for writing this book? It is so good.
I did write it. I hate to say it as an idiot's guide, but I basically wrote it as to explain sort of the nuts and bolts. It was just when there were a lot of television shows starting up about flipping and this old house and all that sort of thing. And, and there were a lot of misconceptions about flipping and what that meant, and there were a lot of people coming forward at that time with that make $1 million. No, you don't need money. You don't need this. You don't need that. And I was seeing a lot of people get in a lot of trouble. And this was before the book was written, before the big crash.
True.
And if you notice, in all the principles that I talk about in the book, if you followed those principles, you would have done fine during the real estate downturn.
True.
It was because I wrote it because I knew that's what worked for me, and I literally chronicled exactly how I address properties and how I analyze them. I'm very conservative.
You are.
And I also kind of wanted to be an advocate for the consumer as opposed to being a real estate agent that's, buy, sell. Mine is very much only do it if it makes sense, and you have to, and it's,
right.
And I mean sense like CENTS, so that it actually makes you money. And you also have to come up with some sort of a formula to figure out ahead of time if the property is going to make you money or not, rather than just blindly jumping in and hoping you can pull it off and hoping you can make a profit. You want to prepare yourself against every worst-case scenario.
What I've noticed...
that's kind of how I've always done it.
Well, you talk about this, and our interview will be kind of non-linear, but this is something that happened. In your book, you talk about you need to put 20% down. You need to put 20% down. And so I was working with a company called Fears & Clark. I'm Clark. He was Fears. And I was helping him grow his company. And I'm reading your book. And one of the things is you want to put 20% down. And you want to look for, you want to do your formula. You have a formula in your book where you calculate it. Am I going to make money? You can figure out whether you're going to make money or not before you even buy it. And so I heard of a pastor in town who unfortunately had to leave the church due to some poor life choices. And they were selling this parsonage, and it was in a neighborhood where the average house in Tulsa was worth $250,000. And if you can believe it or not, Michael, this house was on sale for $70,000.
Wow.
So I go through your checklist of all the things, it's kind of like the deal breakers, if it has mold or it has, and your book is very specific. You're listing off all the things, like if you don't buy a house, if this is wrong with it, but do buy a house if this is wrong with it. And I'm just going through and I'm like, this house isn't a good fit. This house isn't a good fit. And Michael, I'd probably gone through 20 houses and I'm thinking, this guy is not only a great actor, but he's making an impossible list of things. There's no houses that fit this criteria. And then I found a house. It was like a miracle. I found a house that fit that criteria. We bought the thing for $70,000 approximately. I did the math using your formula before buying it. And all in, I figured we can't possibly spend more than $60,000 renovating it. We've got 20% down. Let's do the move. And Michael, we came out of there, even though everything went wrong with every contractor, we still made money as a result of your practical formula. How many times have you heard stories like this over the years?
Many, many times. And a lot of people say, thank you so much for keeping me from getting into bad deals. Because people, when they look at a house, they get emotionally attached and they think, oh, this is going to be so exciting. So you overlook, like, oh, yeah, it might cost this, but I'll deal with it. Or, ooh, it's got that problem in it. You know what, I won't worry about that now. I'll fix it later. No. These are all the things. Basically, you have to kind of renovate that house in your head ahead of time. You have to know what the costs are going to be ahead of time. You have to really prepare for the worst-case scenario ahead of time. And one of the things I always talk about is it's going to take 20% longer and it costs you 20% more. No matter what you do, even if you're being conservative, add that on.
Right.
If you can do all that, and then you can determine how much your closing costs are going to be, how much your carrying costs are going to be when everything goes wrong and you're stuck holding onto that property an extra 3 months. If you can do all that and you can calculate out a profit at the end, it's a great house. And if you can't, then just walk away, because you will be spending 9 months, anywhere from 6 to 9 months, renovating a property that you're not going to make any money on, and you have a potential to lose money. Why would you do that?
You're the only book that I had read, seriously, where it was the only book. I'd read a lot of these books where a lot of people have like a European or an Australian accent. They're on YouTube late at night and they say, make money with no money down. You get the house, make millions. And then they have these people with these false testimonials. They've got the palm trees in the background and they say, well, my wife and I made $1 million in like 7 weeks as a result of this no money down system. But your book is optimistic, but yet it tells you to, even if everything goes bad, worst case scenario, factor that in. And then you go on to say that a home is a good investment both yesterday and today if you follow my system. Can you talk to me about why a home is a good investment both yesterday and today if people follow your system?
Well, basically, if you're getting into a home and you're putting your sweat equity into it by improving the home, if you find a house that is, as I like to call it, a house with the right things wrong, that is a house that has potential for a lot of the improvements that are really what are part of today's market. Very simple. I'll give you one very, very simple example is I love any house where you can sort of bring the outdoors in. So many houses have the potential so that rooms have small windows onto a backyard or onto a side yard. If you can have the potential to put in a French doors or a slider and put a little deck out that side of that wall, you've just expanded basically the perception of the square footage of a house. What a great way to do that rather than people saying, well, I'm going to add on another room, I'm going to get permits, I'm going to put in another. No, you don't want to be doing that. So if you find a house where the right thing's wrong, then you have now invested not only your money at a minimum rather than having somebody else do it and you're buying them at retail. It's basically like buying a house at wholesale and you doing the work. And if you do that, and if you go into it having 20% down, you can also long-term weather the storm of markets' ups and downs. Now, at the time back when I had first written the book, the market was just on fire.
On fire.
And I used to say a monkey with a credit line could make money flipping houses. But where people got into trouble was that when the market started to tank, the people that were putting no money down and were sort of counting on the market increasing in value to make a profit were the ones that got into a lot of trouble, and I know a lot of people who did that, and some people got into huge financial ruin. At the time, and unfortunately I see it happening again,
right,
the
here we go.
banks were loaning to people that really at the time shouldn't have gotten loans. Right. It would have saved them I feel horribly for the people that got into loans that were balloon loans, they were balloon mortgages, they were no money down, they were variable rates, that when the money came due, they didn't have the money.
You're a guy who hasn't had to change your story as the economy's gone up and down. You see a lot of people, and that's one of the things is, I love the Fixer Upper show that was out years ago, with Chip and Joanna there. Love that show. But you have been like the Fixer Upper before the Fixer Upper. You've been very consistent in your message. You've not changed it, but you see a lot of these, charlatans that will teach a system and they have to go, by the way, if the economy is tough, you're going to want to make these changes. You've been very consistent with your fundamentals.
Yep.
And we have a lot of listeners. We have about 100,000 folks that will download each and every one of these podcasts. And I'd like you to, for somebody out there who says, I'm not really familiar with home flipping, but yet I have a bad taste in my mouth because I've heard of these get-rich-quick people who are, calling it flipping homes. Could you kind of introduce people into the world of home flipping and why? Because you're doing it the right way, but I think a lot of people just immediately when they hear the word home flipping, they have a bad connotation. Could you kind of introduce our listeners into how home flipping works, maybe on a third grade level so I can grasp it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, you are right. You will hear, I actually was out on tour for a while with a couple of these people, and we were very much always at odds when they were promoting you don't need any money, you can, we will find you investors, you can get no money debt, basically they were teaching people how to get the worst possible loans from a consumer point of view.
Right.
Where if anything goes wrong in interest rates, economy, stock market, you're left holding the bag. Right. And it happened to many, 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 many people. So basically, home flipping is if you find a property that you can, as I talked about with sort of my formula of you can take a look at what you have to pay for it, what the improvements are going to cost, how much it's going to take you to get that property up to a certain value. You got to look around You got to see what the other houses in the neighborhood are doing, what they're selling for, what amenities they have. You have to calculate. Now this house, I see this house for $200,000. Everything else in the neighborhood is selling for $250,000. Wow, what a great deal. Okay, you hear that a lot. Oh my God, I'll make $50,000. No, you won't.
Right.
Because you have closing costs, you have repair costs, you have carrying costs, all that sort of thing.
You're being negative, by the way, by bringing up the facts. I just want to. There's somebody out there who says this guy's being negative. I just went to a conference this weekend, and they showed me I could put no money down. And how does he have the audacity to give me the negative information? He's blocking
because I really want to save your butt.
Right.
That's the bottom line. I have no agenda. I'm not making any money by you buying packages and me teaching you in seminars and things like that. Mine is very much. I want to help the consumer. So if you can find a house, though, that's $200,000, and other homes are selling for $350,000 in the neighborhood, and this one looks like it could be a really good fixer, needed some TLC, a lot of the things that I suggest in my book, a lot of the kinds of things that I say really improve a home and a home's value. If you can come up with the money for a down payment so that no matter what happens, you can weather the storm and you're not stuck having to be underwater or sell it if the market begins to tank, it's a great way to be able to make a profit, because with the way I talk about it, you kind of do the numbers up front. You want to know how much you're going to make before you even start. And if you can't answer that question, then you don't want to do it. You never go into these things blindly. You never put no money down, because you're going to be the one holding the bag when things go south.
Michael, I'm not the kind of person that's going to tell our listeners that they're bad people if they don't buy your books, but I could have said that, because your book is it's so detailed. I'm serious. I'm not the kind of guy that's going to say if you don't buy Find It, Fix It, and Flip It, your mind might not be fully functional. But I am saying that I would recommend that if listeners would read the book. And in your book, you actually give away this chart, this system, you break it down very specifically how to calculate the profit or lack thereof before actually buying. Why? I mean, I've seen it personally from my own life, but why has this system been so powerful for the readers of your book? It's so awesome.
I think basically because it, as you say, it empowers them. It allows somebody to actually put on paper and give them every possible scenario, every cost that they're going to incur. I'm going to give you a great example. A lot of the home shows, and it used to make me furious, a lot of the home shows, they'll say, Susan and Bob bought a house for $300,000. They spent $50,000 on renovations. They sold it for $390,000. They made $40,000.
I was furious with you, by the way. I was yelling at my TV like, get that garbage off. Unbelievable. Right. Michael's right.
Right. They didn't make $40,000.
Right.
What they're not counting is the fact that it took them 4 months, let's say, for example, to renovate it. They didn't include the closing costs. They didn't include the selling costs, the commissions. They didn't include the fact that they had to pay property taxes, water and sewer. They had to pay property insurance, and they had to pay the mortgage on their loan.
Right.
So it was such misinformation that was being sort of put out there on a big scale in a lot of those home shows that I got so frustrated. I said, let me really break it out for you. Really, these are the things you got to really consider.
Michael, I went ahead and I know it's probably not ethical, but I put a virtual microphone inside your cranium, and I was able to play an audio of what you were thinking and feeling at the time that you heard these things. So without any further ado, here is an audio, allegedly, of what Michael was thinking when he watched these shows scamming you. It's just not a good thing. And in your book, I mean, you are very specific. You're very, it's very pragmatic. It's not a scam. You're teaching people, and you break down, you say, Clay Clark, you say, Mr. Listener out there, Mrs. Listener, in order to be successful in the world of real estate, you're going to need to have the right realtor, a quality mortgage broker, a competent insurance agent, an experienced accountant you can trust, and a lawyer who knows what they're talking about. Oh, and by the way, a skilled contractor. So I know we don't have a ton of time, but I want to go one by one because this is so powerful. Can we talk about the mortgage banker? What makes a good mortgage banker in your mind? What makes a bad one? What makes a good one? What should we look for in a mortgage banker?
know, one other thing that on that list of things that you need, and it's the one thing that everybody really doesn't want to hear that they need, money. You have to have some seed money. You can't go into this process without any money. So yes, you need a real estate agent, you need a great mortgage broker, you need a great accountant, and you do have to have money.
Money.
So you just have to. You cannot. I do not advise anybody going into to begin flipping.
Which is why you had a job. Michael. I mean, I know you're passionate about acting, but I'm sure there's a lot of other things you could have been doing with your time, but you were a very sought after actor, and that was your job. You know,
right?
Here's your job. I started America's largest DJ entertainment company called DJConnection.com. It was my job. But to build wealth, you take your income and you put it into things that can make you more passive income. You got to have income. You got to have some money.
Yeah, exactly. You can't start out with it's unrealistic. As much as people really want to say, but I don't, and I can't tell you how many emails I've gotten from people that said, I don't have any money right now, but I really want to get into flipping. And I'm honest. I just said, then this is not the time for you to get into flipping. Find a way in your in another area, make money. If you can save some money, start building up a nest egg so that you have it to do it. But if you throw yourself into this with very little money and not enough money to then carry your own life or pay for your food and take care of your family and pay your rent, this is not the best place for you to be.
Michael, I don't know if you. I noticed you never responded to my email that I might or might not have sent. But I remember emailing you and I wrote, I have no acting skills and no talent, but I feel like I should be on The Young and Restless with you, sometime between 86 and 91. Signed, your friend in the future, Clay Clark. But I mean, you can't just want to be on The Young and the Restless. You have to have skills. You can't just be on Star Trek, the next generation. I mean, you practiced, and so no money down. You just got to delay gratification a little bit. Got to save a little bit of money. Michael's not a mean person. He's just telling you how life works. You got to save a little money.
And once you begin to do this the right way, it's so incredibly fruitful. I mean, I even talk about after you've done a couple of, let's say you've done a flip property, you make some profit. You, again, me being conservative, and I can hear my father's voice saying, people flip a property and then they want to go spend the money. No. This is a business now, so that money gets reinvested into the next property. Once you have enough profit that you can keep flipping, then it takes you to a whole nother level where my whole next thing is invested into some rental property.
There it is.
So that's where you want to take the money from your flipping. So you want to just it's a slow build and think of it as a lifetime build, so that little by little you're building. And you start small. You start with a very small property that is somewhere in your vicinity, because you never want to flip a property where you don't live near. And you start small, do your first one, make your mistakes on a first one, and then keep building from there. And this is something you're going to do for the rest of your life.
And I'm not trying to paint you into a corner and to ask you specific questions where it's like a gotcha question, but the tax laws, I work with a lot of accountants. I help grow a lot of accounting practices. The tax laws benefit you when you take the profits from one sale and you reinvest it into the next property. Can you explain that a little bit about how you can delay the taxation of your money or reduce the taxation of your money when you take the profits from one property and you roll it into the next property?
Yeah, it's called a 1031 tax-deferred exchange. Okay. And what that is, it's not just the profit. It's all the money that let's say you bought a house, you've renovated, you fixed it up, and you ended up with a profit of maybe $50,000. That's great. But not only now do you have $50,000, but you have all the money that you've already spent as well. So when you cash out and you sell the house, you let's say you sell it for $350, and you've made a profit of $50. You pay off your mortgage. You get back the money that was your 20% down. You get back the money that you put in renovation. That whole amount of money now you can roll into the next property of the same or greater value without paying any short-term capital gain. So it's called a 1031 tax-deferred exchange as long as it's a like property. There's also another tax-wise, and, at some point it will go away, that you do have the opportunity that if you've lived in a home for 5 years, this is something that a lot of people don't realize, that if you've lived in your home for 5 years and it's increased in value a tremendous amount, as probably over these past 5 years, you get per person $250,000, no tax on it. And if you're a couple, it's $500,000 with no tax on it.
Wow.
So that's why, and getting back to your original question of why do you need these very smart people like accountants and real estate agents and mortgage brokers, you want to be talking to your accountant. You want to talk to an accountant who can tell you exactly what your situation is, what the state laws, what the current laws are for you, because you can save yourself a lot of money, just by knowing what the actual tax laws are.
Well, here's the deal.
Why make all this money and then have to give it up in taxes?
Here's the deal.
If there's ways you can delay a sale by a month, or if you can roll it into another property. So there's, again, that's a whole other way of keeping a lot of the money that you've made.
Here, I want to make sure the listeners get this. Michael, you have, I don't know why you decided to make the poor life choices to reach me and our hundred thousands of listeners, but I appreciate you doing that, and I want to respect your time.
I lost a bet. I think
that's the deal. Lost a bet. Yeah, and so again, if you're out there and your mind is sound, you want to go on Amazon, it's going to take you about $20, and you could spend that money at a convenience store this month on Red Bulls and things that aren't good for you, or random burritos, but go buy, find it, fix it, flip it, make millions in real estate, one house at a time. It's a great book, but since that book, Michael's been working on new stuff. There's a lot of new things you're working on, and I would like for you to have an opportunity to share with our listeners what you're working on now, and because a lot of people are just loving what they're hearing, they want to learn more from you. What kind of projects are you working on now, and maybe for the next couple of years here? What's in the future of the world of Michael?
Well, what's been really nice is I love real estate and I love television. So I've done a bunch of shows for HGTV, and I had been doing a lot of real estate finance, being sort of the real estate finance expert for CNN. I've done it for Fox and Friends. I've been working with Realtor.com, Trulia, Zillow. So my thing is there a way to combine real estate and television? And one of the ways I do it is I'm one of the hosts and one of the producers on the television show Extra now, and I have spun off what we call our show from Extra called Extras, Mansions and Millionaires. So
right.
I get to travel around the world looking at the most unbelievably magnificent real estate properties in the world, the craziest. I mean, just for example, this week I shot a segment on the most expensive property in America. It is priced at $1 billion.
Billion. Whoa.
Not million, $1 billion.
Billion.
It's insane. It was originally owned by Merv Griffin, and then one of the Shaws from the Middle East, and now it's basically the top of Beverly Hills, and it's for sale. And I was able to go up there and shoot it and see what it was all about. And it's $1 billion. So if anybody listening has got $1 billion, I got a property that I can recommend to you.
I hear we have a lot of Saudi princes that love to listen, and a lot of members of the Chinese government love to listen to our podcast. So that's exciting.
It's one of those. It's what would be called a trophy property. So I've been very fortunate to be able to parlay television and put real estate in together, and it's something I really enjoy because I love being able to look at real estate. I love being able to see what people do right, do wrong, some of the trouble that they get into, and some of the huge successes and very smart things they do as well.
Now, as far as a particular website you would direct all of our listeners to go check out, because a lot of our listeners are very action-orientated. They want to take action right away, right after the show. They want to just go look at it. What's a website you would direct all of our listeners to go check out?
My website is michaelcorbett.com. Very simple. My Instagram is @1michaelcorbett. And I always post a lot of stuff on there, especially about some of the properties and shoots and places. I think I just put something up. I just came back from Tahiti, shooting two things: a real estate development there, there's a big trend nowadays for resorts, like fine resorts, 5-star resorts, developing their own real estate and private residences. So I went down to Tahiti, and I got to stay in one of these beautiful residences in a resort called Nanuku down in Fiji, and look at the new properties that are coming up. There's a lot of great stuff out there, and I get to go and explore it.
Okay, I
post a lot of that on my Instagram and on my website.
I have two final questions for you, and if you don't like these questions, I'll know that when you hang up on me, that's a sign that you don't like them. So you're a guy who comes across as a very voracious reader, and full disclosure, Thrive Nation, I have not had the opportunity to talk to Michael directly in the past, and so you come across as a very well-read person, and our listeners love to read books. So is there a certain book, or do you have one or two books that you would recommend that all of our listeners would buy, and why?
I would have to say that I think it's almost one person in particular that I would recommend. I love her, and you probably have had her on your show, Susie Orman.
Okay.
Who I think for an average American, for anyone from middle class, it doesn't matter where you are financially. You could be very, very wealthy. You can be very successful. You could be just starting out. You could be right out of college with a load of student loan debt. Her books I find really, really terrific. I just think she's great. She breaks it down. I've sort of modeled the way I approach it by the way she approaches finance. It's very basic, step by step, no BS. Call it like it is. And those I think are really, I love those kinds of smart financial books. Those are really amazing for me. And then also I'm probably partial, if I had to pick a book that I really like to read, is because I happen to be out on tour with him at one point, was Tony Robbins. And I just love his sort of positive, motivational, upfront, you can do it kind of attitude.
Okay.
Basically, I'm a big believer in if you set a goal, work towards it, step by step. Won't happen overnight. Won't start out. You won't be a millionaire in a day. Doesn't happen. But if you set out methodically with a life plan, you can make it work.
My final question for you is: so many of our listeners are big believers that when you change your habits, you can change your results. When you change your daily routine, you change your results. And you're a guy who's obviously stacked one day of success upon another day of success, upon another week of success, another month of success, then a year of success. It didn't happen overnight, Michael, that you've been able to get where you are today, and you're not done climbing the ladder. What do the first 4 hours of a typical day in your life look like?
Oh, wow, that's a good one. As you said, I do like to read, and I like to know what's going on. So I get up and I allow myself maybe the first half hour to 45 minutes. I sit, I can have a cup of coffee, and I read through what we used to call the newspaper, which is now everything obviously on your iPad.
When do you wake up, Michael? When do you wake up?
What?
When do you wake up? Like what time do you think?
I'm usually up by 6.
Okay.
So I get up at 6. So it's sort of like my time before, because I'm on the West Coast, even though New York is already cranking at 9 o'clock. But from 6 to 7:30 is sort of my private time.
Got it.
I can read what's going on. I see what happened overnight. I look at world politics. I look at the U.S. politics. So obviously there's a lot to read there. I sort of look at trends and all that sort of stuff. So that's kind of my information gathering time, is first thing in the morning. After that, even if I'm working from home or if I have to be at the studio, I get ready. I get all prepped to do my day, and I don't really get onto anything like emails or anything else until I've had at least an hour and a half, maybe to acclimate for the day, set out my goals. I look at my calendar. What have I got to do today? Check it out. Kind of pre-pave the day, as opposed to when you have to jump out of bed and run straight screaming into the office. I will always make sure I have time in the morning.
Amen.
So that I'm not doing that.
Amen. This is so good. This is so good. Continue, my friend. This is good.
And then for me, somebody once taught me, and it's a good one. It's hard to. I have to remind myself of it every day. Someone always says the first task you do should be the one you least want to have to tackle.
Right.
The hardest task first, because you can get so immersed in lots of little things. Get the first one out of the way. If you have a
oh, you're so good. You're so good. You're like the Oprah of entrepreneurship. You must continue. This is so good.
It was something that I had read years ago, and it just holds true. And it is really hard to do it, and we will all avoid it upon penalty of death. We really don't. We'll do anything else to distract ourselves. But if you can get that one, the big Megillah off your plate first thing in the morning as your first task, it just makes your whole day go smoother.
Now, here's the deal. I probably owe you $180,000 because that's how much money I made off of the houses I flipped as a result of your system. So the listeners out there, it's incumbent upon them to buy at least 9,000 copies of your books. That's how I look at it. I feel like we need to reciprocate. And I had one final sneaky question for you. We had a young lady who works in my office. Her name is Abby. And Abby wants to buy her first investment property. She does a great job in our office. She really does a wonderful job. She graduated from the University of Tulsa. And she's saying, I don't even know where to start. Can you share with Abby and anybody out there why, honestly, I mean, this isn't like a high-pressure sales thing, why your book is such a valuable, because again, your book kind of lays out these specific steps, and I think why does Abby and everybody out there need to find it, fix it, flip it, make millions in real estate, one house at a time?
Honestly, to be perfectly honest, I get people ask me that all the time. So I really want to get into flipping. What do I do? Or I found a house I want to, and I said, just take a couple hours, just read the book, because it really explains what flipping is. It explains where the pitfalls are. It will empower her, especially if she's someone who's smart. She has saved a little bit of money. She has enough to do this, but it will empower her so that she's not always second guessing herself. That's one of the worst things you can do is when you buy an investment property, you're buying something to flip or to as a rental property. If you don't know that you've checked off all the boxes ahead of time, you're always going to be second guessing, saying, "Oh, did I do this right? I don't know. Should I do this?" Wouldn't it be nice to kind of know the step by step of what you should be doing, so that you know, okay, I covered that, I covered that, I covered that. Wait a minute, I covered that, and this checks out. So this just might be a great idea. And if they don't check out, you go, you know what? I'm glad I went through the checklist, because I don't think this is such a great way to go. It kind of gives you a roadmap, and that's has always been my goal. And I've had many people who sent me thank you notes over the years about thank you so much. I actually really, like you're saying, I read through the book first, and just do that. Okay?
Michael, can you give her a shout out? Can you give Abby a quick shout out? Because I don't have any credibility. Can you give Abby a quick shout out?
Hey, Abby, read the book.
All right, great. Well, Michael, I appreciate you so much. It's been an honor to have you on the show. Everybody out there, go to michaelcorbett.com. That's michaelcorbett.com. It's Michael, and then CORBETT.com. Michael, we like to end every show with a boom. We end the show by saying 3, 2, 1, boom. Boom stands for big, overwhelming, optimistic momentum. If you would partake in the boom, it would be awesome. So are you ready to give us a boom at the end of the 3, 2, 1?
I am.
Okay, here we go. 3, 2, 1, boom!